Flooding has become a common occurrence in Nigeria due to heavy rainfall and poor drainage systems. In 2022, over 3 million people were affected by the floods in 34 states, the worst flood disaster that Nigeria experienced in over a decade. In the wake of this natural disaster, the Center for Citizens with Disabilities has held an awareness campaign on the inclusion of persons with disabilities in disaster response. This next report has more details.
While Nigeria is faced with various forms of environmental issues, flooding has undoubtedly become one of the country's biggest environmental disasters. In 2022, 603 people lost their lives and about 82,035 houses were damaged, while in 2023, the figures from losses of lives and properties have been on the rise due to torrential rainfall and flooding. And this has become a source of concern to many well-meaning groups in the country. One of such groups is the Center for Citizens with Disabilities. The group is holding this awareness campaign to raise awareness on how people living with disabilities are affected by the flooding. The 2023 prediction by the National Emergency Management Agency (NEMA) shows even more rainfall and flooding is to be expected, and the Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disabilities, David Anyonele, has called on relative state and federal government agencies to put necessary measures in place for the protection of people living with disabilities.
In 2022, Nigeria recorded the most devastating flood events in a decade, claiming over 600 lives and displacement of 1.3 million persons. Although there are no disaggregated data on the number of persons with disabilities affected yet. You see, when these disasters occur, when we have calamity that has to do with natural disaster, we always find it difficult to get data on the number of persons with disabilities that were affected. This has continued, for a very long time. As such, what happened last year, even though we recorded 1.3 million people, displaced, devastated as a result of flooding, there is no data from NEMA or any of their allies that speaks on the number of people with disabilities that were affected.
With no exact data on the number of PWDs affected from the flood disaster, the group advocates necessary evacuation and provision of palliatives for persons with disability living on floodplain paths.
We are calling for awareness-raising campaign on the inclusion of persons with disabilities in disaster response. This has to be carried out involving organization of persons with disabilities and the organization. There is little or no knowledge of flood or disaster management among persons with disabilities and the organizations. Local government and state officials responsible for emergency management should take appropriate measures to map PWDs at the ward level in the flood-prone states.
Meanwhile, troubled by the levels of flood witnessed, members of the 10th Senate have called on concerned ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government in charge of flooding to release funds allocated for dredging rivers, canals, and other water bodies as provided in the 2023 approved budget.